Hi, it's Lilian. Let's meet again for a new lore video on Tower of God. During the 3 previous videos we talked a lot about Jahad's empire, especially about its past, so today we'll be able to focus on the current aspect of this empire. And that's why we're going to talk about its functioning, its hierarchy, its politics, its relationship with the other groups of the tower, etc. Anyway, I'm not going to linger any longer. Let's go for this 5th episode on the Tower of God lore. To start with the hierarchy, at the top of this empire of course there is Jahad. He has full power and is above anyone. He is very cold and almost never shows himself directly to anyone, even to give orders. The management of his empire is therefore left, according to the non-canon lore, to the 3 lords. These 3 lords are Moloch I PGR, Yochun, whose real name is Arichun, and Flux. They rule the empire in turn by changing every millennium. The empire is therefore ruled by only one of them at a time. Currently it is ruled by Moloch I PGR, a complicated name. They are the greatest authority of the tower, after Jahad of course. So they have the final word on all political matters in the tower. They dropped their last name to stay politically neutral, and I'll quickly tell you what we know about them from the non-canon lore. Moloch I PGR is the most powerful of the 3 lords, and his influence is comparable to one of the heads of the 10 great families. His name, Moloch I, comes from the Moloch region where he lived. It means the absolute lord of Moloch, which implies that he was once the lord of this region, before becoming one of the 3 lords. After becoming one of the 3 lords, Moloch will faithfully fulfill his duty, and will carry the image of a benevolent and generous ruler, unlike what he was before. However, he sometimes shows a charisma during the governor's conference that impresses all the other floor governors. Although it is said that he was a powerful warrior, that Jahad himself was not to be taken lightly. But as this is very old, surely from the time of the Great Journey or Ascension, most records about him have been lost. Wielding his giant halberd, it is said that he could handle any position without a problem, although to say that he fought without worrying about his position would be more accurate. He is 7m39 tall and is 12th in the rankings of Ranker. He is known to be a rather conservative leader, and that's why people think that he doesn't want to conquer other floors. So they hope that the next floor will be conquered when he won't lead the tower anymore. In vain, since we, the readers, know that the reasons why the ascent is stopped are quite different. I let you watch the episode 4 about the princesses of Jahad about that. Juchun is known to be a more progressive leader and to be for advancement to the next level. Because he loves alcohol, he was nicknamed Juchun, which can be translated as river of alcohol, because Ju means alcohol and Chun means river. He is the child of Ari Han, the head of the Ari family, and of a female resident of the tower. But it is said that his mother died while giving birth to him. There is a rumor that he often drinks with Urek Mazino, but this is not confirmed. And finally, Flux, also known by the nickname the Magician, is the first disciple of Maxeth, the creator of the workshop, and one of the fathers of the workshop. We'll talk about all this in detail in the video that will be dedicated to the workshop. Anyway, like all the other workshop executives, Flux is an artificial organism created by Maxeth. In any case, nobody but Maxeth has ever seen Flux in real life. Only the illusions he creates appear here and there in the tower. He is one of the 3 people with Jaina Repelista Jahad and 2 Perit Peri to own an opera, which is the most powerful lighthouse in the tower. So he is probably a light bearer in terms of positions, although this has never been confirmed. Then there are the floor sovereigns, or governors according to the translation, which I had already talked about in episode 1 on the tower. These governors sometimes meet to debate, in conferences, the policy of the tower. In the end, all the decisions of the conference will be made by the 3 lords. Not all the governors are present since 2 of them are not affiliated with Jahad's empire. I'm talking about Evankel and Bekriun. And it also seems improbable that the heads of the 10 great families who are also floor governors are present, as well as Jahad, who governs the 134th floor. But maybe they send representatives in their place, we don't know. Otherwise, since the end of season 2, with the arc of the last station, the 2nd floor should go back to Jahad's empire since Evankel has been fired by the administrator. We also know that after that, the 10 great families are considered the ruling class of the tower, as I already explained in episode 3, which you can go and see. But there is one family that is still above them. It's the Jahad family. The Jahad family is a family centered around King Jahad, but whose members do not possess Jahad's blood, Jahad having no descendants, as I already explained in episode 4 about the princesses of Jahad. This family is composed of the princesses of Jahad and the Red. The Jahad family is represented by a symbol consisting of 3 eyes with 3 dots on them and is usually red. This symbol can be seen on anything affiliated with the empire, such as the army or the princesses of Jahad. And we are shown in chapter 28 of season 1 a very similar symbol with just an extra cross that was present in the cave where Baam was. a cave that is outside the tower. So there is a lot to speculate about this symbol, especially since the cross on the wall symbol can be found on Hedon's body, which can also be a coincidence since the symbol of the cross is something quite common. Anyway, I leave you to make your own theories on that. This symbol is also present on the rings worn by the princes of the Red Light District, Red Light District being an expression designating the pleasure districts. These rings contain half of the key that opens the doors of the 135th floor. SIU had said about the rings that the symbol of Jahad might have been made from coagulated blood. According to Rachel, who got this information from someone else who has this ring, the term Prince of the Red Light District is used to refer to those who have inherited Jahad's blood and would be a terrible shame for him, which Hwaryun had already implied by saying that this was the most terrible affair left by the 10 great families and Jahad. Rachel also says that they hold power that they were not supposed to have. The known princes are Wangnan, and even though it is not official, one can assume that Karaka, his brother, the captain, and the man who informed Rachel are also. It is also important to know that, since we know almost nothing about the last three, it could very well be two or even one person. Nothing prevents the captain from also being Rachel's informant, for example. However, only Karaka and Wangnan have been seen in possession of the rings, and Wangnan doesn't have it anymore since Rachel stole it from him, and then gave it to Gustang. Jaina Repelista Jahad said in chapter 0 of season 2 that it was time for them to appear. Although it is not clear who she is talking about, it may be these princes. But she also says that the Prince of Jahad will be back. Since she speaks in the singular, it seems that there is only one true Prince of Jahad, and therefore the princes of the Red Light Districts are totally different people. Officially there is no Prince of Jahad, and the princesses of Jahad are the only ones who carry his blood. SIU has stated that the story of the princes will be revealed bit by bit, and that the plot of the rings will unfold at a very slow pace, just like the 13 months. The Red, which mean Royal Enforcement Division, is the enforcement unit attached to Jahad's family. Its main purpose is to enforce Jahad's will in the tower. This division is part of Jahad's army, but its members do not bear Jahad's name, but receive his protection in exchange for maintaining his name and image. This division has a very bad reputation in the tower because they are considered as Jahad's assassins, and they are not appreciated within the Jahad family itself, because when they have enemies to eliminate, they are often part of the Jahad family. They have a hierarchy, although we don't know much about it except that there are one or more commanders and vice commanders, that some have a number, Ren being the number 67 of the division. They serve Jahad, and no one else, however most of them feel no loyalty to Jahad. Some of them go for the pleasure of fighting and killing, or to gain influence for their family or even themselves. But all its members have one thing in common: they admire the power of Jahad. Among the known missions of the Red, there is the execution of Anak Jahad, the real one, as well as later on, the execution of his daughter, and the recovery of the Green April. The only known member is Lopo Bia Ren. The Royal Guards are not part of the Jahad family, but they are completely at its service. They are led by Adori Jahad, who also leads the army, which we will talk about later, although these are two completely different things. It is an organization composed of rankers, whose purpose is to guard and protect all the important places, or all the important people affiliated or belonging to the Jahad family. Like the princesses of Jahad, for example. According to the rules, they obey any order of higher ranking people. They are supposed to be of the level of a ranker, at least since Yuri was telling Pedro in the Hell Train that he could have been one of them. But they must also be much weaker than the high rankers because of the ease with which Yuri was able to defeat one of their group when he went to see Repelista. By the way, we don't know if the guards in Repelista's palace in chapter 0 of season 2 were real guards, or if they were just there for the ceremony. Finally, the Royal Guard is known to have in its midst the most fervent admirers of Jahad. They are of great loyalty, bordering on fanaticism, and some become real psychopaths when it comes to proving their loyalty to Jahad, as SIU pointed out in the note of the 68th chapter of season 1. The princesses of Jahad are part of the Jahad family, and in order not to make this 28 minutes video longer, you can just go and see the previous video about the princesses. As you have noticed, I often refer to the previous videos, and that's why I chose this order, because in order not to be lost in this video, it's important to have seen the previous videos which introduce a little bit the Jahad Empire, the rules, etc. And finally, to conclude with the Jahad family, there are the Royal Guides. So there is a faction of Royal Guides that is led by Evan Edrock. Every princess of Jahad is entitled to one of these guides once she becomes a ranker. But other than that, we don't know much about them. When Jahad himself gives orders, he always gives 3. This is called the 3 orders. These orders are received in the altars of Jahad, which are places where people devote themselves to the praise of Jahad, whom they see as a god. During the sub-arc of the Three Orders towards the end of Season 2, the Vice Director of the Altar, who resembles the Wonbus of galactic football, will be the first with the ranker Charlie to discover the order. Then he will transmit it to the High Priest Stuart Arthur. These orders are normally transmitted to the army and the administrative authorities. The three orders were to kill or destroy. 1. The Fug, which was almost impossible since it is almost a religion or an ideology. 2. All the passengers of the Hell Train, which is the easiest but is against the laws of the Tower and hardly justifiable. And 3. The Pobidal family, which would start a war and plunge the Tower into chaos. In order that the last order not be known to any member of the Pobidal family, High Priest Stuart Arthur kept this information confidential and told only trusted people. These people included Arvin Lu, President of the Ministry of Wisdom, but also Adori Jahad, the Commander-in-Chief of the Jahad Army and the Royal Guards. We can also imagine that Kaisar the Furious, the Minister of National Defense, who we see quickly in Season 3, was also informed. Even if Adori Jahad said that the army should try to annihilate the three enemies and thus respect the three orders, only one of the three orders must be respected. This is a rule that Jahad uses in order to leave the choice to those who carry out his orders. Jahad's army is the largest group of soldiers, whether it be high rankers, or even just regulars, and as such, it is the largest army in the entire Tower. So much so that the army has never failed a single operation when an army corps was involved. They can also ignore the Tower's rules with the approval of the floor administrator if it is necessary for the success of the mission. Since they have never failed a mission, the consequences and punishments for failure are unknown. Perhaps there are none yet, since failure is unthinkable. But some members fear the consequences of failure and fear that they will be executed if they fail. The hierarchy of the army is organized as follows. It is directed by the Commander-in-Chief, who transmits his instructions to the Minister of Defense, who will then organize the operations. For this purpose, it has 5 corps, each headed by a corps commander who will be assisted by a vice corps commander. Each corps is made up of several divisions led by divisional commanders and supported by vice divisional commanders under the command of the corps commander. In addition, there is the private squadron of the corps commander. The divisions are themselves divided into companies, managed by company commanders under the orders of their division commander. These company commanders give their orders to colonels, who will give orders to captains who lead squadrons of 150 members. A corps can thus count up to 50,000 members in all. It should also be noted that there is a lot of vagueness about the hierarchical system of a corps, already because of Line Webtoon's translations, which, for a change, are a bit messed up, but also because we have never really seen a whole corps with all the units and all the ranks. Another hierarchy exists based on the Korean Army one, and which divides the corps in division, then in brigade, then in regiment, then in battalion, then in company, then in platoon, and finally in squad. To all of these are added the army-affiliated members. These are members who are not normally part of the army, but who may join it in certain cases. This can be the case of the Princesses of Jahad, or the members of the Altar of Jahad, for example. But the most recurrent case is that of the regulars sponsored by the 10 Great Families or the Jahad family. This sponsorship system is basically to maintain a certain fairness between the 10 great families, but one of its side effects is that the 10 great families can use these regulars for their own business, and thus also for the army, as it was done in the Last Station arc. The army also has many weapons and warships. There is, for example, El Robina, the deadly weapon in Degree 9 of Jahad. It is an anti-high ranker weapon which exists only in 10 copies, and which was used against Ha Jin-sung at the beginning of the arc of the Last Station. In vain, since it will have almost no effect on him. Jin-sung will say with amusement that it was not Jahad's style to attack with one of these weapons, since he likes them as a collection. There is also Calavan's warship, whose design is actually inspired by the Leviathan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was the main floating ship of the 4th Corps, but it was destroyed by the cyborg Byuan with the help of El Robina's cannon that he hijacked under Jin-sung's orders just before he lost consciousness. It will be replaced by Liberix, which will be approximately the same, and which will self-destruct in order to destroy the cage in the current arc of the Nest, which will also fail. There is also the Aquila, the main floating ship of the 5th Corps, belonging to Yasracha, and having the shape of a cat, surprising. In the army, only 2 corps out of 5 are currently known, the 4th and the 5th, that is to say those who fight in the Nest, and I will therefore give you a quick summary of their numbers. To start from the beginning, at the very top, there is Jahad, who almost never gives orders except for the 3 orders as we saw earlier. Then there is Adori Jahad, the Commander-in-Chief of the army, who directs the whole army, and who will give the orders to the Minister of Defense Kaisar the Furious, who, from the headquarters of the army, will coordinate the operations and thus give his orders to the corps. Among these corps, there is the 4th Corps, which was originally led by Calavan, but is now led by Po Bidao Liberik Kun as corps commander. There was Elpathian as the vice commander of the corps, but he died after sacrificing himself to kill Evankel, which failed, so it was Evankel who killed him. There is also Calavan's private squad with Yoka, Tinker Yoche and Tinker Roach, but only Yoka is still alive. The other two were also killed by Evankel. There are 4 known divisions in the 4th Corps. The 1st division is led by Ari Bright Sharon and has Kul Nisam K as its vice commander. Its other known members are Chatanoa, Jay Wei and Shakul, but all 4 were killed by Evankel. The 2nd division is led by Hachionhi and has Dorian Frog as its vice division commander. It had Fonsecal Drake as company commander, but he was demoted because of his laziness, which is not very surprising for a Fonsecal. It has for Colonel Paula and Misabichi, who was killed by White. It also has as Captain Holy, but she was also killed by White. And it also had as normal members H14, H23 and Knife, who were killed by White, Yuryu, who was killed by Karaka, and Water Jelly, who is still alive apparently, but we don't really care. The 3rd division is led by Nyono 1 and the 4th division by Kun Hind Luk, who died in the Liborik war explosion. And there are no other known members in these 2 divisions. The 4th Corps will surely undergo many changes, as Liborik aims to reshape the 4th Corps entirely by replacing Calavan's men with his own. So the hierarchical structure I just showed you is probably already obsolete. The 5th Corps is led by Lopobia Yasracha and has Makage as its vice commander. This corps has a detached unit led by Nanatona and 4 known divisions. The 1st is led by Lopobia Hasacha, the 2nd division by Lopobia Futile, whose only other known member is Kayla, a company commander killed by Yama. The 3rd division is led by Lopobia Haracha and the 4th division by Kendrick Deal. There are very few known people in this corps because it appeared during the Nest arc, and at this time this corps, like the new 4th Liberic Corps, has not yet been involved in the battle. Therefore this list may fill up quickly when the author returns. Then regarding the affiliates, there are as Ranker Kun Masheni Jahad, who is leading the Nest operations currently, Lopobia Dokoko, Lopobia Lefav and Lopobia Didiano, the 3 members of the Lopobia family who have been dispatched to show the Lopobia family's support to Jahad's army, Charlie, Stuart Arthur and the vice director of the Jahad Altar, who came as reinforcements representing the Jahad Altar during the last station arc, Charlie also being present at the beginning of the Nest arc. And Tura, a ranker, probably from the Lopobia family, who is forced to work for Yasracha because he has the power to control him. Then, in the regulars, there are Kel, Pinnacle, Redbird, Yule, Unisona, Alex, Kong, Levi, Moguri, Navigator, Polo, the Purple-Eyed Brothers, and a group of 3 regulars called Trio. These are all C or D rank regulars sponsored by the 10 Great Families or the Jahad family, who were used by the army in the last station arc. To conclude, the Jahad army having been introduced during the last station arc only, there is a lot we don't know about them, and it will surely be much more developed later, and some unclear points will surely be much clearer later. King Jahad is worshipped as a god by many inhabitants of the tower. This is due to many factors, such as the mythical status of the Great Journey, that is the whole time he entered the tower and conquered the floors with the 10 great warriors, the current 10 heads of the 10 great families, as well as with Arlen Grace and V, even though their names have been erased from history. And no doubt this conquest has been romanticized by many, further enhancing its legendary status. There are also the princesses of Jahad who represent him and are revered for their beauty and power by the tower's inhabitants. This deification can also be explained by Jahad's aloof attitude. Jahad never leaves his palace and almost never gives his orders directly. Just seeing him one day is unthinkable for almost everyone in the tower, even the rankers. And yet he rules everything and can, with a simple order, plunge the tower into chaos. No one ever sees him, but his influence is omnipresent. And this reverence is again reinforced by the various altars dedicated to him, as well as to the heads of the 10 great families and the floor governors who are part of his empire. There is, for example, the altar dedicated to Arie Hon, the one dedicated to Jahad on the 43rd floor before Enryu comes and blows it all up, or those who receive the 3 orders. Just a quick reminder that the inhabitants of each floor have the habit of erecting altars dedicated to their floor governors. No doubt that this deification is also carried by a propaganda of the Jahad Empire, even if many inhabitants have a neutral or even anti-Jahad position. Finally, this deification is also simply due to the real strength of Jahad, who is one of the most powerful beings in the tower, and is therefore extremely feared. If Jahad's empire is clearly the dominant force in the tower, that it is from it that the laws come, and that its domination, be it military, cultural, political, etc., is not in doubt, there are nevertheless other important groups in the tower, and the relations they have with Jahad's empire are also to be taken into account. First of all, there is the workshop, also called the Gongbang, which is an extremely powerful and influential organization, but which has always remained neutral, even if some clues seem to suggest the opposite. Then there is the Wolhaik-song who, by the mere presence of Urek, would represent a great danger to the Jahad Empire if he were hostile. But fortunately for them, the Wolhaik-song does not seem hostile, even if it creates some tension sometimes, as with the Yon family when Urek took the baby Zigena. And finally there is the Fug, which is clearly hostile towards the Empire of Jahad, because the whole organization has only one goal, to kill him. But it remains the least influential organization of the three, and is clearly no match for the monsters that are the Irregulars. Unless... That's it for this time. The workshop, the Wolhaik-song, and the Fug will each have a dedicated video, but it's not for now because there is still one last video to do on the Jahad Empire. A video that I think you will like a lot, because we are going to talk about the RAO. That is to say, we are going to talk about the ranking of the rankers. So you will finally know who is the most powerful in the tower, but especially that it is much more complicated than just raw power. It will surely be a very long video, so I hope you'll be there. And after this one, we'll finally have finished the videos on the Jahad Empire, and we'll be able to do the one on the Wolhaik-song, the workshop and the Fug. Even if there will be other videos after these three, but you'll see. I let you subscribe to not miss it, like for support, comment if you have questions, etc., share and all, and see you again for the next video.